The trade deal between China and the USA has fallen through again. Apparently, China has disregarded agreements here. There are now statements about this from Donald Trump and much more, including from the economic advisor. We need to take a look at the whole situation. The markets actually didn't react all that badly to this. Normally, you would have expected that several months ago, the markets would have dropped 5, 6, or even 7% because of this. Bitcoin sold off slightly, traditional markets reacted a bit negatively, but overall, it wasn't that bad. Still, the Bitcoin price is looking very, very negative right now. Let's take a look at what's going on at the moment. We have new inflation data, and there are new updates about Bitcoin reserves that are supposed to be coming, even here in EU. But before we get started, go ahead and give this a like. Bitcoin needs all the support it can get right now. We need every single like at this moment. So please go ahead and hit the like button down below right now. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button too. The problem we have, I've mentioned this in my recent videos, is that every time we've had the Bitcoin conferences in Las Vegas, we tended to see a sell-off in the last few years. We just had another sell-off. But honestly, it's not that bad. Some people are already calling for a bear market again. In my opinion, that's complete nonsense. But later on, we also have a very, very critical analysis from Willy Woo, an on-chain analyst, who actually says that in the next few hours, we'll see whether Bitcoin continues to show a bullish trend or if we could actually sell off to below 100,000 US dollars. One thing is also clear, while a lot of people are scared right now, there are still some very, very big buyers out there. A whale just bought Bitcoin for 42 million here. We can also see that the 40x long whale James Wynn is once again taking massive long positions, 46 million in long positions, after he lost his last position here. So, we have people here who are very, very confident and are even entering the market with massive leverage. The fundamentals still look good. As you can see here, the M2 money supply is still rising massively. We'll also take a look at the Fed and the inflation data in a moment. That's also very, very interesting, generally speaking. Yes, inflation is going down, but we'll take a closer look at that in a bit. Let's get to that later. So, there are definitely some arguments in favor of lowering interest rates here. That would, of course, give Bitcoin another boost, but I do understand. With all the trade issues and so on, the uncertainty, Powell doesn't want to show his hand here and doesn't want to stimulate too much too soon. But as we've always seen, the money supply is what really matters. And if we just look at the money supply, I've also said, hey, if there's only one chart you look at, then look at the money supply. If we just look at it in such a straightforward way, then it's really a no-brainer that Bitcoin has to keep going up. But you have to understand that, too. Bitcoin hasn't just been going straight up over the past few months either. There are always little pullbacks. We go up 10,000, then it drops back 2 or 3,000, then we go up another 10,000, and it pulls back a bit again. Sometimes we even see corrections of 20 or 30% and more. I mean, some people would say now, that's just stupid. I want it to go up really, really fast. But we also have to realize that if it goes up too quickly, becomes too parabolic, then in the past we've always seen those massive sell-offs. And it could be that Bitcoin has now matured, meaning it's become more grown up. And that's why we're actually not seeing such extreme moves anymore. We can also see that the volatility is already decreasing a bit. We also see that spot ETFs continue to buy. In May, we absorbed more than 6.35 billion in capital here, marking the highest monthly inflows since approval. And this is a report from Bloomberg, which is of course also a very, very good indicator that BlackRock and others, or rather their clients, remain highly convinced. And what's really wild is what's happening in the background. For example, we had the speech by Vice President J.D. Vance, who was massively bullish on Bitcoin. Then we have here in New York, the BitBonds ads. We have Donald Trump Jr. who, no, not Donald Trump, the real Donald Trump, who is buying 3 billion in Bitcoin. Of course, his two sons also made some major statements here at the event. GameStop bought 500 million worth of Bitcoin here. Pakistan, strategic Bitcoin reserve. UK, potential strategic Bitcoin reserve. Paris, a moment of opportunity, has announced a Bitcoin reserve. We had Jack Dorsey in Las Vegas, who announced that Block will now focus even more on Bitcoin. Now, through Tether, we basically have Tether on Lightning, and there were so many side remarks and major statements here at the Bitcoin conference. And that's exactly what I want to share with you, including all the treasury companies and so on. Things are already happening behind the scenes. So real groundwork is being done here. Yes, the Bitcoin price might be telling a different story at the moment, but that's also because we still have all this uncertainty, the macroeconomic uncertainty. That means, when it comes to Bitcoin itself, there are actually some really awesome things happening, but the macroeconomic uncertainty, and we'll take a look at that now, just leads to Bitcoin having a bit of a harder time than you might expect. We actually have a very, very long tweet from Donald Trump here, in which he gets really worked up and basically says China has completely violated the agreements with the USA. And of course, that's just one side of the story. I don't know of any statements from China at this point. There are only statements from Donald Trump here. He says, in what is obviously a failure of the trade agreement, Trump says, it's over now. Being Mr. Nice Guy here, we have to implement different policies now. We have to act differently now. And now the big question is whether the trade agreement between the USA and China has just fallen apart. So to me, it definitely looks like the deal has at least temporarily fallen through. Let's quickly listen in again to what the U.S. Treasury Secretary has to say. He says similar things here as well.
Characterize those talks now.
I would say that they are a bit stalled. I believe that we will be having more talks with them in the next few weeks. And I believe we may at some point have a call between the president and party chair Xi.
So he also says that the talks have stalled. What's also interesting here is that this interview took place before Donald Trump's statement. So to me, the interview still sounded a bit more positive than what Donald Trump said here. So Donald Trump is really making some very bold claims here. If we take a look at the details, he says here, oh, I need my pointer again. Let me just grab it real quick. Drop a like for this awesome bullish charging cable. He says here, China, not surprisingly to some, has totally violated its agreements. So Donald Trump had already expected that this agreement would be broken. And to me, it really sounds like this is the end of the line here. We also had a statement from the U.S. Trade Representative Creer, who made some self-critical remarks as well. So here, that's the trade representative who says he's very concerned, not just somewhat concerned, but very concerned about China's non-compliance with trade regulations. And yes, as I already told you before, in the past the market probably would have dropped 5% or so because of this. But we can see that the market is actually holding up pretty well right now. It seems like the market just doesn't react as strongly to all this trade stuff anymore, which is actually a very, very good trend. It would mean that, in the long run, trade agreements and so on are relatively irrelevant here, because the market has simply, well, accepted it. Of course, if you were to somehow bring some certainty into the situation, it would probably still have a very, very positive effect on the market. So it's not entirely true that it doesn't matter to the market at all. You'd probably realize that as soon as some positive news comes out and things are finally settled, the market will react very positively to it, because a lot of the uncertainty is probably already priced in, and that's why the market doesn't react as strongly to negative news anymore. But of course, the market could still react to positive news, simply because a lot of the negativity is already priced in. But at some point, there's a limit. There just isn't any more room to price in additional negativity. But now let's take a look at a very, very interesting story. Willie Wu, who is an on-chain analyst and often provides very accurate analyses, says we have exactly 2 days and 16 hours left. He says that Bitcoin is now at a crossroads. That means either it will recover or they will. Sorry, I read that part incorrectly just now. He says there are now 2 possibilities. One possibility is that we see a recovery here, or we have a bearish divergence on the weekly charts. And then that would mean we'll be stuck in a boring sideways phase for weeks. So I basically shared the chart, and he says that by the end of the week, we definitely need to see a green candle here. It really has to look good, look positive. And if we have a bearish divergence here, then things could just move sideways for a long time again. And yeah, by now we are all familiar with these sideways phases and so on. More and more people actually believe that this is sometimes deliberately provoked by exchanges, by big players, and so on, to flush out the weak hands from the market and for other reasons. I mean, that's just the fatal thing about it. A lot of newcomers, a lot of weak hands and so on, they just get pushed out by the boredom. The thing is, the craziest thing you can actually do in life is just to endure the silence. Do nothing. Sit on your butt, maybe meditate. Close your eyes for 10 seconds, maybe listen inwardly, or on the other hand, just hodl. That means doing nothing is a real skill, one that we've often forgotten these days. We're always wired that way. We always have to do something. Move, think, talk, this and that, buy Bitcoin, sell, trade, leverage options, and so on. But just saying, okay, I have Bitcoin, I'll just hold it for 10 years, I won't do anything with it, and that's it. That's really, really hard for a lot of people. And that's why you actually have to relearn how to do nothing. So theoretically, you're still not doing anything. In theory, you can do nothing, nothing at all. Even if you do nothing, you're technically still doing something, because either you're doing nothing, or you're thinking, or you're not thinking, or yeah. So that's kind of an oxymoron too. That's why the Austrian school always says, humans act, because doing nothing, that doesn't really work. So yeah, because even if you do nothing, you're technically still doing something. But now we have to look at another interesting story. I've told you before, from time to time, that Conor McGregor wants to build up a massive strategic Bitcoin reserve with Ireland. And now we also have Nigel Farage, who wants to kick things off here in the UK. And he just dropped a wild tweet about it. He says here, "I want to build on the amazing feats President Nayib Bukele has achieved in El Salvador. He wants to set up something similar to what happened in El Salvador, but here in Ireland." He said that Germany sold its Bitcoin. Ireland won't do something like that. He wants to use Bitcoin, crypto here. He wants to create a blueprint here, a decentralized blueprint for sovereignty, something that others can also copy and adapt. He wants to help Ireland here, and the world is watching. It's time for real change. So now is the time to really make a change here. And of course, Bitcoin can bring about that change. There are always a lot of people who say, for example, that the Bitcoin project in El Salvador has failed. I mean, that's obviously bullshit. If you look at it, ever since the IMF did that, in my opinion, Bitcoin adoption has definitely moved forward. There are more and more places where you can use Bitcoin, and so on. I'm not even sure if I've shared this story with you yet. Just recently, I actually lost my wallet here. Well, it wasn't really a wallet, just a phone case that had some cash in it. My payment cards were in there too. So at first, I didn't have any payment cards. But the thing is, I'm here in El Salvador, so I already try to pay with Bitcoin wherever I can. But then I didn't have any dollars at all, and I thought, damn, do I actually need dollars now? But then I realized, damn, no, I actually don't need them at all. And yeah, now I've ordered new cards, but basically, I've been in bank for about a week or so. But of course, that's not a problem here at all, because it's easy to get by with Bitcoin here. Sure, maybe I have to walk to another store around the corner once or twice, but if you know where the stores are and so on, you can get by here just fine. If you're completely new here, you first have to find out who actually accepts Bitcoin, because of course not every place does. But people who, for example, say that the Bitcoin project has failed and so on, in my opinion, it hasn't failed either in terms of payment acceptance or in terms of the Bitcoin reserve strategy. And you can see it too. People like Conor McGregor, who probably aren't exactly Bitcoin pros or anything, are still drawn here to El Salvador. So apparently, there must be some kind of appeal that even reaches someone like Conor McGregor. There has to be some kind of outward effect, and that probably wouldn't be the case if Bitcoin wasn't present here at all. And actually, yeah, Bitcoin adoption is still a big topic. It's happening too. Like I said, Bitcoin adoption. I mean, education is still an issue as well. The locals still have a hard time with it sometimes. It's often the tourists who are really pushing it forward. You have to be honest about that. But I mean, Rome wasn't built in an hour or a day either. You just have to start somewhere. And that's what's cool, that Ireland wants to do it, that El Salvador is doing it. And there are different approaches. Bhutan, for example, has a different approach again. And of course, not everything works perfectly, and you have to tweak things a bit. But yeah, in the long run, in my opinion, anyone who doesn't get on board with Bitcoin here is going to have big problems. And that's why, if you still want to buy Bitcoin now, I'll put a link down below to 21 Bitcoin. Here you can buy Bitcoin easily, safely, and simply. If you use the code Bitcoin Hotel, you can get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. It's an absolute recommendation from me. Definitely check it out. See you soon. Take care.